All right, so I'm going to go over the activity for 1.3.4 and try to do it as efficiently as possible to just kind of speed up the process here, and so you kind of have the requisite skills you need to build this. Okay, so in order to do this, first thing I'm going to do is scroll down. Okay, and this is kind of a big unit, but what it wants me to do is set these three items. It wants me to set a hexagon here. It wants me to set a hexagon here in the middle. It wants me to set, a pentagon here in the middle, a hexagon here in the corner, and then a triangle down here in this corner. Okay. And what it wants me to do is use my constraints in order to make that happen. So to do that, the first thing it wants me to do in step 4 is to sketch a 4-inch by 6-inch horizontal rectangle. So first thing I'm going to do here is create a rectangle. Now I'm jumping ahead because it's going to give you this in another, but it wants you to make it 6 by 4. Okay. So once I have that, then, sorry, click on the wrong screen. You can just stay in your sketch. And so the first thing it wants me to do is to create a circumscribed pentagon. So to do that, and I would not put that pentagon in that line the way they show it. It's going to mess you up later. Just follow my lead on that. And that wants to be 0.35. And then so you put the distance in, and then I can adjust the number of sides that it has. And so I would select 5, okay? And there we go, there's my pentagon. Second thing is it wants an inscribed hexagon at 0.25. So the next order of business then is to create another polygon. This time it wants an inscribed polygon. This one you can't put, it doesn't make as big a deal. Okay, and this one's going to be 0.25. And the number of sides defaults with the polygon command to 6. So that one's already set, so I don't have to do anything else with that. And then the last thing it wants me to do is actually create an equilateral triangle down here. And so to do that, I'm going to create another polygon. And as I create the polygon, what it's going to do, or what I'm going to do here, is actually come in, create polygon, and make an edge polygon. And so on this, I'm going to make it 1.25. And then it wants to know like where I want to put, and then it wants to know how many sides, sorry. So if I make it 3 sides, okay, there we go. I'm pretty much set up there. Okay, so now I have an edge polygon here for my triangle, the inscribed hexagon, and the circumscribed pentagon. So my next step then is it's going to go through all these different steps, and it wants you to use your constraints to put the center of the pentagon here, to make this parallel with that, okay, and then to take this point and put it in this corner, just like this drawing down here, okay? So to do that, all right, what I'm going to do, again, I'm going back to this constraint option here, okay? And so one of the things I'm going to do is just make sure this is horizontal with this. And you'll notice immediately I can't select anything here. So one of the things I have to do is come in here and put a line, okay? And then depending on how picky you are, it doesn't matter. But if I make it a construction line, it'll turn to like a dashed line, which means it won't read it if/when I try to extrude it. So with that being the case, I'm going to just leave it as a dashed line, but it will allow me now to take this. Whoops, actually make that coincident with that. and then there we go. So I made it coincident, then I made it horizontal. Now the next thing I need to do is just wants this at a distance from this point to the bottom. Oh, it doesn't want an angle. So I use my D command. Okay, and then I'm going to set that at 0.5. And there we go. Okay, so if you use your horizontal constraint and you're coincident and just get it on that line, it's going to line it up properly for you. The next thing is it just wants to take one of these edges and make it parallel here so that this is running through, see how this is through the center of that line? So to do that, again, I'm just going to take my constraints. I'm going to find my parallel constraint here, select and select. Okay, and there we go. Now this looks proper, and then from this midpoint, I'm going to make this and then if you get stuck on a constraint, just hit escape. Okay, and so this wants to be offset at half an inch. So there we go. We got half an inch. We're equal. Everything is good there. The last thing, and this triangle is a little trickier, but one thing I want to do is make this point coincident down here. And I'll be honest, sometimes this works, and sometimes, and then it wants this to be in the middle of this line. The problem is that you don't have a midpoint. This line spans this whole distance. So if I just make this a midpoint, I'm going to try a different trick. It's not going to work. So no, that won't go. Okay, let's try to use a symmetry command because this one can get this feature for whatever reason is just kind of a weird order of operation. So if I come in here and just put another line in, and then I use a midpoint constraint here to attach it, typically that's what I'll use. So midpoint, a little more stretched out, constraint. There we go. Okay, and so there it oriented. I just had to stretch that line a little further, and now it oriented the midpoint of this in alignment with this line here. Okay, and so that's really what we were after there. All right, so there's the basics of setting that up. At this point now, what it's going to want you to do is use your pattern tools. So I'm going to quickly go over the pattern tools and then probably leave it at that for right now. So on here with my pattern tools, so create circular pattern. Okay, now the only thing about this is you can shift select and okay, it's work. If you don't leave these as construction lines, it'll grab the other items, which can create some issues. But in this case, I can then select my center point here. Okay, now the initial, so I just to kind of go over what I did real quick. Okay, so create circular pattern, select, center point, select, quantity. I'm going to adjust it here so that it's 5, and you'll see that it corresponds pretty much with this image. I'll show you that in a second. Click OK. There we go. Now we've got our pattern here. Okay. The next thing is it wants a rectangular pattern up here. So create rectangular pattern. Okay. Objects. And then if I just drag these arrows, so again, I'm going to make it look like this. Okay. So I drag that arrow out. I drag the other arrow down. Now you'll see here that I have 3 for quantity. If I knock this down to 2, okay, it took out the middle ones, of course, but one of the other things it does is it gives me 6. That's fine, okay. All I do when I'm done then is come in here and select this. Okay. Delete all that out. And there we go. Now this looks like that. Okay. Now I selected the center points. It's not gonna, it doesn't matter one way or the other. Okay. The last thing it wants you to do is create the linear pattern. Not the last thing, but the next step is to create the linear pattern of triangles. So in order to do that, create rectangular pattern. Again, I'm going to just select these 3 lines. And this is kind of what I was referring to earlier with your difference between your object lines and your sketch lines. If I come in here and create a rectangular pattern and I select this, see how it's selecting this line? So that's why sometimes it's just better to make these construction lines because it won't select it as part of the object now. So when I come into my rectangular pattern and I highlight this, it's still selecting it, but whatever. It's only 3 selections, so I'll just be honest, I would select the edges because when Fusion starts doing stuff like that to me, I just kind of move on with it and figure out a way around it. So directions then, the last couple times we've grabbed these arrows, well not with this one, but with this one. This time we're going to select a direction. So we're going to actually select this line and then drag our triangles up in order to get the profile we want out of here, okay? Okay, so there we go. And now we have the linear pattern of triangles. All our patterns are in there, and we're ready to move on to step 9, okay?